Hello everybody and welcome back to Apotheosis Role-Playing Games. Today we have Teddy with us again, and most importantly, we have Vixen. And there she goes. So today is a Q&A of questions you guys asked us and want to know about. Some of these questions are incredibly vague, so if you need us to clarify, please comment down below saying that's not really what I was trying to say. So, just so you know, we're kind of interpreting these as we go. So the first question is, what motivated you to create the Apotheosis system?
That's a great question. I love answering it. Thank you for bringing that one up, guys. So back in 1998, I went on a car ride from Georgia down to Florida with two old friends who I had learned how to play tabletop D&D with. We had played together previously for 7 years, and we were hardcore gamers at the time. A lot of Forgotten Realms, a lot of second edition Dungeons & Dragons, and then we branched out and we played all different kinds of games. Palladium games like Rifts, Shadowrun, you name it, we played it. And what we were trying to do was, we said the systems were too limiting, and we wanted a gaming system that was more robust and balanced. So it was easy to find a gaming system robust. And then the more robust it was, the less balanced it was. And then the more balanced it was too simple. So we wanted something moderately complicated that was balanced and stopped putting people in little boxes and making it so the characters were incredibly cookie cutter. So this very long car ride got us into a huge conversation over the course of 2 days, and from then on, we started developing a system. It took us 2 years to build the system itself. So in 2000, our system kind of came alive on its own. And then we play tested it from 2000 all the way up to now. And we've had over 110 play testers. We've probably done 10,000 hours of actual tabletop with gaming groups from all across the United States. And they've all been able to add their input into the game, and I've taken a copious amount of notes on best practices for storytellers and how to keep the game moving forward. And the main two things of why we created the system, we wanted, one, a system that allowed you to play different species where the characters and the monsters use the very same system. None of this, my character has this kind of a progression, and then the monsters have these abilities and they never change. We wanted everybody to be on the same playing field so that it was completely balanced and expansive. And number two, we wanted some sort of magic system that, even though magic isn't real and you have to kind of wing it when you're making up the rules, it made sense from the top to the bottom so that the system could integrate in, and then you could have great storytelling and great stories over time that made sense. So those two goals seemed really simple. Took us almost 20 years to achieve it. Apparently it wasn't. But we feel we're there now, and we're happy to bring the system to you guys.
All right. So, noting on what you just said, I feel like that everything is pretty much really important, especially when you want to play some crazy characters. Most of the time when we have playtesters, they think of the craziest character they can possibly make, and they make them. They make a race that they've never played before. Sometimes they even create their own races. So it is really important to us that our new playtesters and our old playtesters really like the being able to do the same things the NPCs can do, and just kind of making yourself into a monster, effectively. Yeah. So, how do you balance the vastly different species in the game?
Great question again, and really complicated. So I'm going to try to keep this short. Well, one, we're developing an app that allows you to create a character using any of the creatures that are loaded into the codex. At the moment, our codex, or our monstrous manual, has over 450 creatures in there. So, one, there's an app to make this all very simple. So for the people that really want to get into the math, essentially what we did was we broke down every single species by all of the abilities that create them. So their strength, their endurance, their charisma, all of those things, the number of essence or hit points they have, how big they are, how fast they move, how much damage they can deal, how much damage they take before skills are added to the character. And then all of those abilities are balanced against each other. And it's on a point system, so you end up with a species cost, essentially a number of how powerful your creature is out of the gate. And then we're able to use those numbers to compare different races at the table. So if you have say, a traditional party where you have an elf and a dwarf and a halfling or a hobbit, depending on what you call them, and a human sitting across from each other, those species are very close together. There's not a lot of variance between their numbers. There's mostly flavor. But there is a little bit from character to character. In a game like that, it's pretty easy to balance. You take the most powerful creature, and whoever is playing the most powerful creature plays the character as is, and then everybody else sets their campaign cost, which is normally dictated by the storyteller, to the highest number at the table, and then the other people at the table get a point bonus on their species section so that they can buy extra flavor things for their character so that they feel like they're getting a balanced experience and they're playing the same point cost as the other person, but playing a vastly different species. So that's how a storyteller can easily balance all of the different things that players can make, and everybody can feel like they're having a fair experience.
Just to elaborate on what he said a little bit to have it make a little bit more sense, guys, we have tiers, and each race is on a tier going from a tier that you can put insects on all the way up to gods. So humans, elves, and dwarves, since they're really close together, they would be on the same tier. Then there would be tiers lower and then tiers higher. And you can move your tier up or move your tier down, depending on what you want to do with your character. So if you want to move your tier down and turn into, let's say, a bear, if you want to go from elf to bear, it's pretty easy to do. Going up in tier, like if you wanted to go from being an elf to a dragon, a little bit harder to do. It takes a lot more time, but it's doable. And that's kind of what he means by closer and farther away from each other. So how do you build a character?
Again, a really complicated question. I have a feeling that all three of these were asked by the same person. And all three of these questions really deserve their own video. But again, I'll try to keep this short. So first of all, you have to speak to your storyteller and find out what kind of campaign you're going to play. You got to make a character that's going to fit into the campaign, or you're just going to completely derail the storyteller, and it's just going to be a terrible experience for everybody. So, with storyteller approval, so that being said, so the storyteller is going to sign off on what type of character you're going to play. Alright, so as soon as you've got that, then the first thing you should do is decide what sort of role that you want to play going forward. Assuming you're going to play for quite a while, you don't want to get bored. So you want to play a role that you are interested in. Maybe it's something you've done before. Maybe it's something that you've never done before. It's all up to you on that one. But you got to be interested in it. It's supposed to be a game. It's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to be doing this to blow off steam. So, and you're spending a lot of precious time on this. So do something that makes you happy. All right. So pick a role at the table that's going to be interesting to you. What I mean by role is, am I going to be the party healer? Am I going to be the protector character? Am I going to be the character that solves all the diplomatic problems? Am I going to be the character that solves all of the violence problems? Am I going to be the character that can go out into the woods and track and navigate and that kind of thing? Once you choose where you're going with it there, you'll have a baseline for what kind of skills that you want, and now you stop working on your skills, you stop worrying about all that stuff, and you worry about your background. Pick the species that you're going to play and make your background. Go to the background tab on the character sheet and fill the whole thing out. And they're really long. And what's on the background tab? So on the background tab is stuff like where were you born? What's your relationship with your parents like? How many siblings do you have? What society do you come from? Obviously, you're going to have to speak to your storyteller about an awful lot of this stuff to get approval for it. But this is the part of it where you add flavor to your character's personality. This is the part where you take the wheel and write out a character from start to finish with the things that they like to eat and the things that they don't like to eat and the different goals they have in life, and you write down some experiences that they had as they were growing up, or if they're very young, some experiences they might want to have, some future goals, some things that they want to do with their life. And once you have a background together, a personality will start to form, and it'll be easier for you to play your character. Adding things like using an accent, or dressing up for game, or having props helps you get in character. It helps you stay in character, which is really, really important. And once you've got the background down pat, and you know what role you're going for, then you use the character app, and you go through the tab in the tutorial, and it helps you build the character. It reminds you to buy certain skills you may need. It shows you where to spend your points if you're trying to play a warrior character. You got to go to the warrior tab, and you have to buy certain supporting skills. That I'm not going to get into right now because of how long it'll be, but trust me, we'll do a tutorial video with the app once we're ready to present it for the Kickstarter. And you guys can see how that all fleshes out. But how to build a character? Step 1, get storyteller approval. Step 2, figure out what species you're going to play. Step 3, build that background and focus on it for roleplay, and then get into the numbers. I know that was long.
Yes, it was. I am not going to add anything. So we will probably be making multiple videos on how to create your character, how to create your character background, props, all that stuff. It's a lot of stuff to do. We know it is. So there'll be probably multiple videos on that. So getting right into the next question, is there a guide for NPC creation? Which is probably about going to be the same answer.
That's great. Actually,
it's
absolutely the same. In fact, the PCs and the NPCs should be built the same, and that's one of the things that we try to do with this gaming system that seems to have not been done with other systems. I haven't run into a system that actually treats it that way. The NPCs, the non-player characters, are the same as the player characters. You use the same system. You build a background. They have roles. They have motivations. They have quirks. It absolutely has to be the same. And if they're not the same, then it's impossible to balance the system. So that's an easy answer. Yes, absolutely the same.
Yeah. On Friday Night Games, we run a science fiction playtest, and I actually have all of my main NPC, keyword main NPCs. You don't necessarily want a character sheet for all of the little no-named NPCs you're going to find, but for all of my main NPCs, they all have a character sheet fully fleshed out, and it really makes things quicker, just a little bit, especially when you're making your own custom NPC. So having that character sheet be NPC, monster, and just have it for everything is really incredibly helpful as a storyteller. So how do you balance the power levels of encounters?
So this question I get asked an awful lot by storytellers who are new to storytelling, and by a few storytellers that have run a couple of games that have had a total party wipe where all the PCs have died in one terrible encounter where the storyteller wrote something and thought that the PCs were going to be able to handle it no problem and ended up having to start the campaign again. So how do you balance the power level of encounters? Well, one, use the old Gary Gygax rule. The NPCs that you put on the board, they use the same rules as the player characters, but it's okay to make them weaker. The whole point of this thing is you're supposed to be having fun. The point is the players are supposed to win, but you're supposed to make them work for it. So I work the encounters in 3 levels. Either there's a middle ground encounter where it's an even fight. In other words, during any kind of encounter, whether it be social combat, actual combat, or some sort of trap or puzzle, the risk and reward of the encounter is equal in power level to the party. And obviously that gives them about a 50-50 chance of winning. So try to always bend it in their favor a little bit, but in the end you want to make them work for it a bit. I don't use an even level encounter every single game. I only use them every few games because tabletop role-playing allows you to have that thrilling feeling of great mass combat while you're being overwhelmed by many lower-level foes and you can win against all odds kind of feeling. So I use lower-level encounters, which are generally between 25% to 30% weaker than the characters themselves. So, if it was a 20th level party, I might throw a bunch of 15th level monsters on the board, and that encounter is about 25% weaker than, and that will give them that feeling of defeating a bunch of overwhelming numbers. For boss fights, the rules are very different. So you want to put one or two mobs or monsters on the board, NPCs, and then have the players defeat this great and powerful thing. So it's got to be great and powerful, so it's got to be more powerful than the players. And 25% sometimes isn't enough. But if you go more than 50% more powerful than the entire table, then you end up wiping them. So what do? So you make your boss mob about 25 to 30% more powerful, and then you give him some of those minion mobs around him that are 25% weaker than the party. And then you get that classic feeling of the boss mob has a bunch of minions around him, and I got to take out the minions, and then I'll take out the boss. And these numbers work for social encounters and for combat encounters. It doesn't really make any difference. And it's great if you can mix the two together. That's the quick and dirty way of balancing the power of encounters. And the last and most important rule, don't be afraid to make your NPCs stronger in the beginning and then have them fail. It's okay for them to not accomplish their goals perfectly. It would be Sauron would have been the Lord of the Rings would have been a very short story if Sauron did everything perfectly. So even though you've created this incredible story in your mind with this horrible antagonist, remember they're an antagonist, and the players are supposed to be the protagonists that are eventually supposed to win as long as they don't do anything too terribly stupid.
Although sometimes that happens. And there's a party wipe, and that happens. Not a lot you can really do about it. But sometimes fail does happen with the players and the DM. It just happens.
And actually, that's a good thing, though, is if you're playing the game with the same group of people over a long period of time and you want it to be challenging, sometimes you're going to have characters that don't make it. And you're going to have scenes where players just don't figure out the puzzle, or they say something terrible in the middle of a diplomatic roll, and it just spirals it off in a different direction. And that's why we're playing. We're playing so that it can be different. It's not a scripted quest from some MMO where I follow the character and I get my 5 gold pieces at the end, and I can repeat the quests and it had absolutely no effect on the world. You want people to fail. You want people to make mistakes. You want things to grow, and you want it to be a collaborative effort from the storyteller and the players writing the story together. It's not that the storyteller writes the whole thing. You're supposed to create what I call the skeleton of the story, and then the players are the ones that help you fill out the meat and the guts and the skin, and in the end you have this incredible thing. But you only have this incredible thing because you worked together to do it. It's not an us versus them scenario where the storyteller is playing all the bad guys and the players are playing all the good guys, and it's always going to be us versus them. It's definitely a collaboration event. So good communication is key.
I totally agree with you. All right. Thank you guys. I think that's it for today. We will see you guys again next week. Just keep in mind we do have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter that we do post, I believe, on a daily basis. And if you would like to help support our videos, we do have a Patreon. And if you want to become a playtester, it is one of the Patreon perks if you donate $20.
The $20 tier gives you access to me and access to a playtester group. And it would be really great if we got more playtesters. I know that 110 sounds like a lot, but I would rather 1,000. The more people that we can get on board, the better. We are working on our Kickstarter. We haven't launched it yet. The only reason why is we are just finishing up the app, and we want to make sure the app is at 100% before we Kickstarter it. We've signed a deal with our book printer, and we're very excited about that. So we have the book being printed. Now, the printed books are only going to be offered on the Kickstarter as a tier gift. We're not printing books and selling them at this time. So what we are doing, though, is we're giving out the app and the PDF together of the book. We're trying to make this as affordable as humanly possible for everybody because we want to get our game out there and have you guys start rolling dice.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.